You would think the military is all about efficiency. It's supposed to be one of the most organized systems in the world. But once you're actually inside it, you start noticing how many things just don't make any sense. From just wasting your time to actually harming your experience. Here are some of the dumbest rules I've experienced as a Finnish conscript. And the most common one of all, hurry to wait. You're always in a hurry, but somehow you're also always waiting. The second you wake up, you throw on your clothes as fast as possible and run outside for morning formation. Everyone lines up, half asleep, ready for the morning jog. Except the person responsible for the jog didn't even show up. So now over 100 people are just standing there in formation, not sure what to do. In the military, everything is done to the minute. But since everything and everyone is always late, it leads to this. You're eating lunch and suddenly someone yells that the next training exercise is starting. So you're forced to throw out the rest of your food and run in a hurry. Only to arrive there and realize that there's a line of people waiting. So now you stand there for 20 minutes doing absolutely nothing. And once you start noticing this pattern, you see it everywhere. But that's just the start. Attention! What happens when someone with a higher rank enters the room? If even a foot enters, you're supposed to immediately jump up and yell attention as loud as possible. And it better be loud enough too, because if your yelling is weak, you're going to be repeating that. And God forbid, your voice cracks while doing it. Thankfully, the further you go into your service, the less people actually care about this. When you first start, you better follow. After 6 months, you're lucky if people even turn their heads around. Except when it's an actual professional. Not just some guy that got there in the previous batch of conscripts. But what about something so simple as speaking to a superior? You first have to say their rank, then your own rank, then your name, and only after that you're allowed to speak. And of course, you first have to get the permission to do so. So instead of just asking a simple question, you have to deliver a full introduction speech. This seems to annoy the professionals even more than us. But the rules around eating food were not just annoying, but way weirder. Eating outside. Sometimes, instead of eating inside the cafeteria, like normal humans, we had to eat outside. And no, I'm not talking about a training exercise or anything similar. We would take our food outside and stand alone under a tree in the yard while eating, not to be spotted from the air, on base. Meanwhile, the cafeteria building is literally right there. Like, we can see it. But instead of getting a proper meal, we are eating some hot and yellow mush from a container. And every company had different rules about this. In my company, for example, you had to stand alone under a tree while waiting, and you had to keep your hat on, because Russians could spot your buzz cut from miles away. Right, guys? But when I trained with another company, their rules were completely opposite. I found this out when a guy from there tried to be a smartass and asked me, "Wait, do you stand while you wait in your company? Do you wear a hat while eating?" "Yes, now let me finish my slop." They had to kneel while waiting, share a tree with someone else, and they weren't allowed to wear hats. Consistency was definitely not the military's strong point. But somehow the packing rules may have been worse. Whenever we went to a training camp, we were given these huge packing lists. Everyone would be running around trying to pack everything as fast as possible. Except that one guy, just laying on his bed, still on his phone. Me. I was that guy. Because really, think about it. If everyone else is panicking and fighting over space and equipment, why would I rush in? Once they're done, I have all the space in the world to pack. And somehow, I was often done before them anyway. Because I had a little cheat code. I simply didn't pack everything on the list. Like, what do you mean I need 3 sweaters? It's the middle of summer. And these lists never change. So eventually you just memorize what actually matters. Because every camp is either a one-night trip where you won't need any of the stuff anyway, or a super intense exercise where you're sleeping with your boots on and barely have time to refill your water bottle. But there was one risk with my packing strategy. Random gear checks. Random gear checks. This was always a risk, since there could have been an issue if I was noticed. No, I wasn't dumb enough to skip on the important gear. Like, God have mercy on you if you forgot your gas mask. But I was a star soldier. I always had my gas mask. The problem, however, was that it didn't work. And I didn't realize that during inspections. I mean, how would you? No. I realized that inside a room filled with tear gas. That was a great moment to find out. But hey, at least I could still claim I had it. Random gear checks had a point, unlike room inspections before weekend leave. Inspections. Before getting to go home for the weekend, our entire room, lockers and us would be inspected. Now in theory, this makes sense, but in practice, we would stand next to our bunks completely still, sometimes for 5 minutes, sometimes for 45. You stare at the wall above the person in front of you, trying not to start moving out of boredom. The inspections were almost never real inspections. Our trainers also wanted to go home, so they would just walk in, glance around the room, check that nobody had a beard growing, and then leave. When we first arrived, they made it sound like if one thing in your locker was out of place, you'd get punished. But in reality, people had half their stuff missing, things in the wrong places, and nobody cared. It was basically just a rule to have another rule, because the military loves its rules and traditions. Laundry. Laundry in the army works like this. The entire company of over 100 people marches to the laundry building at the same time. You form a single file line, and then you exchange your dirty socks and underwear for clean ones. That's it. But somehow it never worked like it was supposed to. Sometimes weeks would go by without our company even getting access to the laundry. So now you're wearing the same sweaty shirts for 3 days straight. Lovely. Eventually, it got so bad that people started washing their clothes in the bathroom sink. I think the laundry people just didn't want to bother with us, honestly. The people made sure you knew how much they hated their jobs by constantly complaining. And even when we did get laundry time, we were always in a hurry. Hurry to do what? Wait. It always goes back to that one. Hair. The military didn't have a barber. That was a real shocker to me. But they were still very serious about hair rules. 3 weeks before finishing my service, our entire company was called outside and lined up. An officer started giving a speech about how horrible the place was and how unsoldier-like we were. He said that if he sees someone whose hair is too long after being warned, he will personally make sure that person is bald by the end of the day. Then he starts walking down the line, pointing at people. Eventually, he gets to me and points. The most annoying part was that my hair wasn't even breaking the rules yet. But according to him, it would break the rule in a couple of weeks. The last week I was there, so I had to cut it. Thankfully, he allowed me to do it during the weekend. Otherwise, my options would have been cutting it myself in the bathroom with scissors, or trusting the self-appointed barracks barber and praying he doesn't ruin my hair. I hadn't come to issue with this rule before this. Unlike cleaning, which caused issues every single day. Cleaning. Every day there was a dedicated time for cleaning. You had to clean your room as well as one public space allocated to your room. You'd hear the speaker system turn on and everyone would immediately sigh. Then begins the mad dash at the cleaning cupboard because there was never enough equipment for everyone. People grab whatever they can while a couple of motivated dudes start climbing on shelves and furniture trying to actually clean something. Then you heard the countdown on the speaker system as one guy makes a last second sprint to return the cleaning equipment before the inspections begin. Inspections start. Everyone lines up next to their bunks and stare forward. The corporal walks in. Someone yells, "Attention!" He looks around the room, finds a single piece of dust, and now the whole room has to redo the cleaning. Sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times, sometimes 7 times, until eventually, every time they just get bored and say it's good enough. Now, the room itself was the easy part. We also had to clean the bathrooms. Getting to clean genuine human shit for €6 a day was just the greatest. But what do you do on base if they have no training planned? You know it, cleaning. You would have to clean random areas that weren't even part of your responsibility. One day, our room got assigned the worst cleaning task on base, the downstairs bathroom. This wasn't just any bathroom. This was the one used by drivers and corporals, the people who have lost all motivation long before we even stepped foot on the base. I wasn't there, so when the order first came, my roommates tried ignoring it. Then a second order came. Eventually, a couple guys went down to clean it, so everyone thought that was done. Big mistake. A corporal suddenly storms into the room, face completely red, yelling about how horrible soldiers they were for ignoring direct orders and how they would be punished. This guy was normally one of the quietest officers around, which just shows how serious they took this stuff. Those were some of the dumbest rules I've had to deal with as a Finnish conscript. And just to be clear, this isn't me hating on the military or anything. Most of the stuff has a purpose, and overall it was a good experience. If you enjoyed this video, check out my other stuff and please subscribe. I've only got a few.